of Luke, chapter 5. We'll read verses 17 through verse 26. It came to pass a certain day, as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was present to heal them. And behold, men brought in a bed a man which was taken with a palsy. And they sought means to bring him in, and to lay him before him. And when they could not find what way they might bring him in because of the multitude, they went upon the housetop, and let him down through the tiling with his couch into the midst before Jesus. And when he saw their faith, he said unto him, Man, thy sins are forgiven thee. And the scribes and the Pharisees began to reason, saying, Who is this which speaketh blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone? But when Jesus perceived their thoughts, he answering said unto them, What reason ye in your hearts? Whether is easier to say, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, Rise up and walk? But that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power upon the earth to forgive sins, he said unto the sick of the palsy, I say unto thee, Arise, take up thy couch, and go into thine house. And immediately he rose up before them, took up that whereon he lay, and departed to his own house, glorifying God. And they were all amazed, and they glorified God, and were filled with fear, saying, We have seen strange things today. Again, Matthew, Mark, and Luke record this healing of a man sick of the palsy. As we saw earlier, it's a miracle that took place in Capernaum after Jesus had returned there. It appears that Jesus is in the house of Simon and Andrew as a result of the fast-spreading news that Jesus was back in that house. A very energetic crowd had gathered to that particular house to see Jesus. And the size of the crowd is described in Mark chapter 2, verse 2. Straightway many were gathered together, and then also insomuch that there was no room to receive them, that is in the house. No, not so much about the door. So there's a multitude surrounding that house. It's a picture of a people crowded into a house, a people outside the door, a people spilling over into the property. Luke says here in verse 17 that the massive crowd that gathered that day was, again, partly comprised of the Pharisees, the self-righteous religionists, and doctors of the law, the so-called experts in interpreting God's law. These appear to be in the house, and as always, they were there to judge Jesus Christ, to try to trap him. There were also those that were there, again, out of mere curiosity. There were those in need of healing, and perhaps there might have been some out of there because they actually loved Christ. But for the most part, the people that were gathered there were there to see the spectacular. And Jesus was in the house. That being so, Luke says in Luke 5:17, and the power was present to heal them. The Lord's power was present that day. So in that house was omnipotent, Almighty God in a body of flesh with power to heal them. Didn't matter what the disease was, didn't matter what the problem was. He had the power to heal them. He had the power, had the ability, had the authority to mend whatever needed mending, to cure whatever needed cured, to repair whatever needed repairing, to restore whatever needed to be restored, to deliver whoever needed delivering, to strengthen whatever needed strengthening, and to bring comfort to where comfort was needed. He was there, and He had power to heal. Now Matthew, Mark, and Luke again focus upon 4 individuals who carried a man on his bed who had been overtaken with a paralysis. And they carry this man to this house where Jesus is. Matthew states in Matthew 9 verse 2, "And behold, they brought to him a sick man of the palsy, lying on a bed." Mark says in chapter 2 verse 2, "They come unto him bringing one sick of the palsy, which was borne or carried by 4, or of 4. And Luke states in Luke 5:18, "And behold, men brought in a bed a man which was taken with a palsy." So 4 men, 4 individuals, carrying this man on a bed to the house where Jesus was. And regarding this, Matthew and Luke both draw attention to the fact, to this specific fact. These 4 carried this man. And they both say, "And behold." And behold. Something momentous. Something we need to have our attention drawn to. So attention is drawn to the remarkable faith of these 5 individuals, and also to the Christ's healing and forgiveness of this man. So I want to speak on Jesus' authoritative power over sin and paralysis. We see this man, first of all, in the presence of Christ. The picture presented: 4 men carrying a pallet, a gurney. On that pallet is a man taken with a paralysis. They are making their way to where Jesus was. And the faith of these 4 individuals caused them to be determined, to be purposeful, to be unceasing in their movement toward Christ. Their faith would not allow them to be indifferent. Their faith would not allow them to be lazy in this matter of getting this man to Christ. Their faith would not allow them to be content with anything less than being in the presence of Christ and presenting the need. Luke records again, Luke 5:19, "They let him down through the tiling with his couch," and then notice, "into the midst before Jesus." Now in those words, "into the midst before Jesus," we have words that are indicating position or location. You have the word "into." You have the word "midst." And you have the word "before." The word "into," of course, speaks of the house itself. They are in the house. And he gives us another detail. The word "midst" describes the location in relation to the house. And the word "before" describes the location in relation to Jesus. So this man taken with a paralysis is in the house. He's in the middle of the house. The house is full. So there's people on all sides. And then the most important position is that he is before Jesus. He is lying on his bed, and he is before Jesus. We see him there. He is sick of the palsy. He is in a suffering and debilitating state. And though there were many others in the house, this man is in the midst before Jesus. This means much more than just in front of Jesus. He's in the very presence of Jesus. There were many who were before Jesus in the front of him. And no doubt there were others in front, but not like him. He is before Jesus in a way that no one else in that house is before Jesus. He was before Jesus. He did not get stuck outside. He's not just part of the crowd outside. He did not remain upon the roof, hearing only the muffled sound of Jesus' voice, but he's in the midst where all in that house could see him, and he's before Jesus. Those two words, before Jesus, distinguish him from all others in the house. He is in a very special way before Jesus. How did he get there? Persevering faith brought him to this position. And though a suffering man, he's in the best place that he could possibly be. What better place can there be than before Jesus? He is a man suffering from a paralysis that left him unable to walk, obvious from the fact that he had to be carried. But persevering faith has brought him into the midst before Jesus. He couldn't walk to that place. Persevering faith brought him to that place. Brought him to where he is face to face with Christ. And every day, it needs to be our desire. It needs to be our intent. It needs to be our resolve to get to this place before Jesus. How do we get there? Faith. Faith. We need faith that comes from God to get us to this place. Into the midst before Jesus. Regardless of the situation, regardless of the condition, regardless of the need, this is the best place to be before Jesus. Into the midst. It may be in the midst, in this case, was the midst of people everywhere. It may be in the midst of cares and burdens, but it needs to be before Jesus. That's where it needs to be. It may be in the midst of difficulties and problems, but it needs to be before Jesus. It may be in the midst of sorrows and heartaches, but it needs to be before Jesus. Again, it may be in the midst of anguish, it may be in the midst of distress, but it needs to be before Jesus. You see, whatever else was in that house really didn't matter. This is what mattered. He was before Jesus. And we need that faith. We need a faith that moves us beyond and above all else and brings us to this place before Jesus. Before Jesus. So let's consider the significance of before Jesus. It is no doubt a difference-making position. And this man suffering from a debilitating paralysis is let down through the tiling with his couch into the midst before Jesus. And it's there. He's in a position where he can feel the very presence of Christ. Do we always feel the presence of the Lord? No. We don't. It takes faith to bring us to this place where we feel the presence of Jesus. He did not get stuck outside in the multitude due to the difficulties that were out there. And he did not get stuck upon the roof due to the difficulties that were there. But this man with a paralysis is lowered through the roof, and he is in the midst of the house before Jesus. And there he is in the very presence of Christ. Outside, in the multitude, and upon the roof, he knew of the presence of Christ. When he was outside, he knew Jesus was in the house. When he was up on the roof, he knew Jesus was in the house. He knew of the presence. But now he's before Jesus. And he feels the presence of Christ. He's now able to feel the actual physical presence of Jesus Christ. Now, though he's in the midst, other people all around him, he in a very special way felt the presence of Christ like no one else in that house. I don't believe he even felt the presence of all the people around him. But he felt the presence of Christ. It was like it was just him and Jesus. There's quite a difference between what he feels here and what he felt on the outside in the multitude, or what he felt upon the roof. He's before Jesus. It is a place of great possibility. It is a place of great hope. It is a place of assurance. It is a place of peace. It is a place where he knows all is well. All is well. He's in the place to be before Jesus. It really doesn't matter. If you're before Jesus, it doesn't really matter what consists in all around you. He's in the midst, but he's before Jesus. He's in a position where he can see Jesus. Again, he did not get stuck outside. All he could see outside were the people. That's all he could see. No matter where he looked, there were the people. He knew Jesus was in the house, but all he could see were the people. He did not get stuck upon the roof. For all he could see was the roof. This man suffering from a paralysis, upon his bed, is lowered through the roof into the midst before Jesus. And there he could look up from his bed, and what did he see? Jesus. He can see Jesus standing there. And I'm absolutely certain that he did not cast a careless gaze in the direction of Christ. His eye is focused upon Christ. He's not looking around the room, surveying the room. His eye is focused upon Christ. There are people all around him. There's a lot going on in that house. But his eyes are fixed upon Christ. He can now see God's provision standing right there. He can now see God's remedy, God's cure. He can see it. He is before Jesus. Everything feels and looks different before Jesus. If you're just in the midst of the house, oh, what you might see. But when you're before Jesus, everything feels different. Everything looks different. He is in the place to be. He's in a position where he can hear Jesus. Now, others in that house could hear him if Jesus spoke loud enough. But now he's in a place where all Jesus has to do is whisper, and he can hear him. So again, he did not get stuck outside in the multitude. What did he hear out there? The people. The people. If that's all you hear is the people, you're going to be quite depressed and quite discouraged. And he didn't get stuck upon the roof where he could view the people below and hear the muffled sound, perhaps, of Christ's voice. But he's now in the midst before Jesus. And he can hear him. And I'm sure that there were many noises going on in that house. But he heard Jesus. He can hear Jesus. I don't believe he was distracted by all the noises in the house. He heard Jesus say directly to him, Son. That was the first word out of Christ's mouth to this man was Son. And all the joy that filled his heart. Where did he hear that? Before Jesus. Had to get before Jesus, and he heard that word, Son. And then he heard, following Son, Matthew 9, verse 2, Mark 2, verse 9, Luke 5:20. Thy sins be forgiven thee. Be, present tense, ongoing. Thy sins be forgiven thee. So what has Jesus done? He's healed this man's soul. Thy sins be forgiven thee. Jesus deals with his soul first. And that always should be first priority. Thy sins be forgiven thee. This was his greatest need. Yes, he was paralyzed and he had needs, physical needs, no doubt. But this was his greatest need. Perhaps it explains, not saying for certain, but perhaps it explains why he was in this state of paralysis due to some sin. But all the joy and peace that flooded his soul when Jesus said directly to him, thy sins be forgiven thee. That is, son, your sins are removed. They're gone. They're blotted out. They're washed away. They're not imputed to you. It was before Jesus that his load of sin was taken from him. As soon as Jesus spoke those words, thy sins be forgiven thee, the scribes thought to themselves that Jesus was guilty of blasphemy. They don't rejoice for this man. They're only there to find fault. And now they think they found it. They thought Jesus was guilty of blasphemy. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, they didn't say anything. They're thinking it. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, rebuked them. Matthew 9, verse 3 and 4. Mark 2, verses 6 through 8. And Luke 5, verse 21 through 22. All three record this fact. He's in a position also where he receives instruction from Christ. Again, he didn't get stuck out in the multitude where he could have heard all kinds of instruction as to what he should do. Well, what you need to do is, I know this guy, I know this doctor, and give him my name, tell him I sent you, and I'm sure he can help you. And he did all kinds of things out there in the multitude. And sadly, many of God's people get stuck in the crowd, and they follow the advice and the instruction of the crowd. Never get before Jesus. But it's before Jesus that he's instructed to do some things that he could not do. Jesus said, "Arise. Arise." Once you've done that, I want you to bend over and pick up your bed. Those were impossibilities. He couldn't do any of them. But it was instruction that would change his life. So he's in a position where he received. He's also in a position where he can experience and receive from Christ. Again, he did not get stuck outside. He did not get stuck upon the roof. All that would have greatly limited his experience. But he's lowered through the roof upon his bed into the midst before Jesus. And there he experiences and receives the Lord's power. The instruction was, "Arise, take up thy couch, go." Arise, take up, go into thine house. We read in verse 25. And immediately he rose up before them. Who's the them? All those in the house that he's in the midst of. And took up that whereon he lay. He was enabled to do so. He was enabled to do what he could not do. Where was he enabled to do that? Before Jesus. You'll be enabled to do a lot of things before Jesus. Before Jesus. Well, I can't do that. Well, you get before Jesus, you'll be surprised what you can do. That's where enabling power is found. So, he took up his bed whereon he lay. So he received and he felt the strength, first of all, to get up. He felt that strength. And then he felt the ability to pick up his bed. And when he stood up, I don't believe he was wobbling, trying to find something to hold on to. He's steadfast. And he feels the strength, the ability to pick up his bed whereon he was carried. So you look at him. He's now standing before all. He's in the midst of that multitude. He's standing before all. They can see it. And he's standing there and he's holding his bed. He is the recipient of a miracle. Standing there holding his bed, he is a miracle. And all the miraculous wonders we experience before Jesus. Again, look at him. Standing there, holding his bed, he's blessed. And all the blessing there is before Jesus. It is in this position where great change takes place. Again, he did not get stuck outside in the multitude. He did not get stuck upon the roof, but he's lowered into the midst before Jesus. And it was there he is enabled to rise up. It is there that he is enabled to pick up his bed with his hands. And then we read verse 25. Remember, Jesus said, "Go to thine own house." And departed to his own house. And what was he doing? Glorifying God. He left a changed man. Changed. The man was brought to Jesus, bouncing on a pallet or gurney. And I'm sure there were probably some moans and groans along the way. But he wasn't carried home. He walked home. He ran home. He jumped. He did everything. But he was not carried home. I believe the other four probably went with him. And as they headed home, perhaps one of the four or some of the four would say to him, "You must be tired. Why don't you lay down a while and we'll carry you the rest of the way?" But we hear him say, "No, that's okay. I can go myself. I can walk myself." And he praised God. And he praised God. Perhaps some said, "Well, let us at least carry your bed." "No, I'll carry it." And he praised God that he was able to do so. Whatever may have happened on the journey home, I believe we can be sure that he went home walking. He went home carrying his bed, glorifying God. Oh, the change that takes place before Jesus. So you see this man, a miraculous and obvious change has been wrought in his life. Now what if this man would have come home, carried on his bed home, still unable to get out of bed, just lay there in the bed, and he would say, "Oh, I had such a wonderful experience. Jesus healed me." There's no evidence of it. Well, he says he's healed. There has to be evidence. But this man wasn't carried home. He returned home a new man with a new life. And when he told somebody in his house, the Lord healed me, they had to listen. They had to see there's a difference. Something's happened. But he went home a changed man. And as a result, his home life was changed as well. Jesus saves a soul. That home is changed as well. When he arrived home, he was able to walk through the door. No one had to assist him. Perhaps there were family members there wanting to help him. He didn't need help. He would say, "It's okay. I can do it." And he praised God, glorified God. When he arrived home, he was able to walk around his house and do things around the house that he could not do before. And he praised God. It is a picture of a saved life. He glorified God through it all. Be sure of this. There is life-changing power to be found before Jesus. So a faith that moves you in the direction of Christ, brings you into the presence of Christ, will enable you to have a wonderful trip home. And I'm speaking of home above. It enables us to have a wonderful trip home. Oh, what Jesus can do. Brother Ben, if you'll come and lead us